Welcome to Legal Business Development Coaches Corner. I'm Steve Fretzin. We're going to be talking about growing your originations, how to become a rainmaker. You guys are in for such a treat today. We're going to have a lot of fun and make this happen. Of course, I want to welcome and thank everybody from Financial Poise. Good group of professionals going to be joining us today. Okay. And National Law Review in partnership. It's a premier legal news website offering in-depth analysis, and you can read the rest. Please visit National Law Review, nationallawreview.com. Good people over there. Gary Chodes, good man, and Jonathan Friedland. Okay, material in this webinar, it's for informational purposes, guys. It's not legal, financial, or other professional advice. Judy can appreciate that, right? A little disclaimer. Obviously, consult with anybody before you make any of these decisions. However, the stuff we tell you about rainmaking, it's all gold. You know, there's no disclaimer other than you're going to love it and you should use it. We've got three incredible panelists today: Judy Barton, BNY Wealth, Gary Johnson, J2 Marketing Consultants, and Heather Mulder, Course Correction Coaching. And as I mentioned, I'm Steve Fretzin, the moderator, Be That Lawyer. Definitely go to the end of this deck and check out our bios and learn more about us. You should have our emails. Obviously, if you love what we're saying and you have an interest in talking to us directly, you have our email addresses. Don't be shy to reach out. Get a coach, get a friend, get a financial consultant. And Judy, you got it all there for you. All right. So what are we really talking about today? We're talking about something that lawyers don't learn in law school, and most business professionals really don't learn. They sometimes just get thrown into the deep end. And that's, how do you become a rainmaker in your space? If you're a CPA, a banker, a lawyer, whatever the case is, I think we all can agree that there's nothing that can develop a career better than bringing in your own clients and having your own book of business. All right. So we are going to be talking about that in great detail. You guys can read through the deck on your own. By the way, this is part of a series. We're cooking through this thing. We've got November and December left. We did the future of legal tech. If you have not seen that, we crushed it last month. The amount of content and talk about AI and what the future is of legal and other professional service was there. We've got ours today, content creation for effective thought leadership, happening in November, and tips from America's top rainmakers, bringing in some heavy hitters in December. So definitely go and check that out. As I mentioned, this is going to be delivered in plain English, understandable to investors, business executives, et cetera, et cetera. All right, here we go. We are jumping into the deep end right now, and we're going to have some fun. Let's start off with a question. And Heather, you are lined up for this one. Many professional service providers struggle with selling their services. What's your take on why they struggle?
So I think it's twofold, at least from what I've seen in my clients and in most of the lawyers I've known. And the first is this mindset around what selling even is. I think a lot of people envision the used car salesman, you know, sleazy, slimy, pushy, trying to get you to buy something maybe you don't want or need. And I always remind my clients that selling is really just an exchange of money for goods or services. It is neutral. It is the how that can make it sleazy, slimy, so, you know, gross, pushy.
Yeah.
The other thing I note that I know lawyers have this, and I'd be curious to note if other professionals do. My guess is yes. We have this weird mindset around, I didn't go to law school for this and I wasn't trained for this, as though our legal training somehow means we're supposed to be super trained in everything else that we do. And I see this showing up in selling, marketing, even running a business. And that's just not true. It's a skill. It's a skill that can be developed as you do it. So in my opinion, it's those two things show up all the time.
Yeah. Well put. Gary?
No, I completely agree with Heather. I think also a lot of professional service providers look at selling like they're going to manipulate, that they're going to be like, I'm just manipulating this person. And they do, like what Heather was saying, they feel sleazy. They're like, ah, God, I want to stay away from that. And it's basically because you've never been taught how to do it. And if you are taught the right way to do it, it's, you know, it's gold. It's absolutely gold. And it's a lot easier than a lot of people think too. I would also say another struggle is rejection. They hate to be rejected because they put all of their worth into this and they go, if this person doesn't sign up with me, therefore I'm not a good lawyer. I'm not a good accountant. I'm not a good fill in the blank. And so they're putting their worth on that rejection, which then you just start to back away from it.
Yeah. Well said. Judy?
I usually like to answer in terms of threes. So I think service providers struggle in selling their services because number one, they sound the same as everybody else in their industry. That can be fixed. Number two, I think they're so fixated on being whatever professional service that they're delivering, they're in that persona that they forget to just be themselves. And so in my role, a lot of investment people are like, I am an investment professional. And you know what? I just want to show up as Judy Barton and we can talk. The third thing is, I think people struggle in selling their services because they talk too much and they don't listen and ask questions.
Yeah. And that's a pretty rampant issue for most professional service providers. It's like their knowledge is based on what they say and what they share, but what they don't realize, they're giving away a lot of free consulting, and they're not necessarily understanding people at the level that they should, where questions would uncover a lot of that and help qualify. So really, really well said, guys. I think it sets up our next slide very well, which is, where should professionals start in developing their own clients? And Gary, I'm going to jump in, have you start with this one.
Okay. Yeah, I would say identify a target market. Who do you want as your clients? Because a lot of people just say, oh, anybody who can pay me. And that's my clients. And typically they hate those types of clients. So what are you interested in? What do you have a lot of knowledge about? And also, what market will be able to afford your services? Sometimes we don't think of that. We're like, oh, we're so passionate about this and this, but they can't afford you. And so you have to make sure that they actually can afford you. But I would say identify a target market, because that opens up so many different areas in regards to business development and marketing. Where are you showing up? What's your messaging? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah, fantastic. Judy?
In developing your own clients, I think you need to do three things: determine where the best clients are currently coming from, determine where the best clients could be coming from that you're not getting them from, and then third thing is have a strategy for both areas.
Yeah.
Very
And
simple.
what's your strategy? Like, how did you do this for yourself, right? As someone who's highly successful, what did you do it at the beginning of each year? How did you get started doing it?
So I look for areas where in my industry where there is some kind of impetus for change, depending on what that is in a prospective client's life. And I look to professionals who are assisting
Mm,
those desired end clients with that change.
yeah,
And I build relationships with them so that they will bring me in to facilitate and help with my part, the investment part, the money part, the wealth transfer part of that life change.
yeah,
So it's something that's you want to have a strategy that you can, that's repeatable and scalable, and that you can also take and apply it to possibly different areas. You don't want to have to recreate the wheel and do something different for all the different areas. You want to come up with a strategy that is applicable to several different areas and has those kind of same results.
yeah. But I love that, because people think about the individuals that they're interested in, not necessarily the situation that they're in, and then who's helping them with situations where you're going to have to fill a spot or a role in that change, life change experience, whatever it might be, business, personally. Heather, what's your take?
So I agree with both of them. And those are the big picture where you kind of have to start. But once you understand the big picture of the business you're building towards, you have the strategy, you've gotten your strategies together. I would say, to get a little more granular, start with who you already know. I see this as not a lot of people who come to me don't do that or feel really weird about doing that initially. And it's probably the easiest place to get started is the people you already know. And go through an exercise where you just list out, who do you know that are relevant within the industries and the businesses that you want to target based on the business you're actually trying to build. And make a list and then prioritize based on relevancy and based on your sense of whether they'd even be open to helping or sending you work. And you will find very quickly that you actually have some people on that list that you can get started with.
Yeah, that's great. And I know one of the first things I do with a new client, is like, all right, let's create a plan. And in creating a plan, a written plan, we're going to see like where's the low hanging fruit, and going after the people, the clients that love you, the relationships, that where you have deep relationships with people that are well connected, whatever it might be. Like,
Yep.
Yes, let's start there. But I also want to make sure they know what to do and say, because if you meet with all those people and you don't have a good approach, and you end up staying in like the friend zone, or you end up not getting the conversions out of it. So I think there's a two-part here, the plan, and then having some systems or processes or language or something, which again, they would get from folks like us. Read a book. Here's a thought, read a book, or watch a video, ask ChatGPT, like, how do I engage with these people, whatever it might be. Anybody want to add on to that, or should we go on to the next one? Heather?
I think when it comes to how do you engage with these people, and oftentimes I find it's really hard for my clients at first because it's been a while, right? They want to re-engage.
Yeah.
It's not that hard. Just reach out. And the biggest thing here is only reach out to people you actually like. Do not force relationships. Okay. So you want to build a business with people you want to work with regularly, who you actually like. And so if you're reaching out to somebody, it can be very natural and organic as long as you're reaching out to somebody you actually like and checking in and re-engaging and asking a question, seeing how they are. There are a lot of ways to do it, and somewhat depends on how you've known them, what your last interaction was, base it off of those things. And then just start a conversation, because when you're reaching out, you're not reaching out to sell to them immediately. You're reaching out to build a relationship over time that you will then be able to sell. And then when it comes to your comment about they keep it in the personal zone, I see that a lot, especially with lawyers. We keep it in the personal zone forever and they never bring it to business. My best tip for that seems to work really well is don't just ask about personal stuff. Ask a lot more questions around their business and their goals and their challenges and their struggles. It will open all sorts of doors for you to be able to easily walk through and start talking business and then making that ask of how can I help?
Yeah. And then like 15 minutes into the conversation, they've just listed off all the problems that you as a lawyer or CPA or whatever solve. And you're like, have you ever thought maybe I could help you with that? This is sort of what I do every day. And they're like, oh, I can't believe it. Yeah. They already trust you. So might as well throw it your way. Crazy. All right, guys, we're going to keep moving along here. We're doing great. All right, let's start off with Judy on this one. What was your biggest mistake when you started selling, and what did you learn from it?
My biggest mistake was hanging on to the hope that a prospect or a COI, a center of influence, was going to materialize into something. And I just kept investing time in it, and kept going and kept going and kept going.
Yeah.
What I learned from it was at some point you just need to move on. And if they are interested, they will come back around. If they want to develop a relationship or get back in touch with you, they will. But really having that discipline to say, I've given this good time, it's not materializing, I need to let go and move on, is a really important learning for anyone who is starting out in trying to develop a practice.
Yeah. Leave hope in the movies with Andy Dufresne, right? He had hope. You guys with me on that little Shawshank. But but I think people that live in professionals who live in hope, and they don't know why they're not getting their return calls. Why this went so great? How can they not? Where'd they go? And they just don't understand that there weren't enough questions asked to identify what's really going on. Gary, do you want to pile on that? Judy, sorry.
You just jump back in, just say, sometimes it's not you. Sometimes, a lot of times, you don't know what's going on in that other person's life.
Right.
And
I guess
that I've learned.
my spin on that is that I think people are missing asking certain questions that helps us understand their situation and get to the truth. And like that's a big part of selling today, I think, is can you get to the truth and what's real? And when you don't, and you just pitch or you just go in and I'm not saying you did that, Judy, but again, we're talking about like what are the things that happened to us when we first started. But I did that too. I would live in hope for a year that someone was going to buy. I was selling franchises, and I'd chase after them for a year and just waste countless hundreds of hours chasing after ghosts because I had this optimism instead of knowledge and information, which is what kind of the new sales should be. Gary?
Yeah, I would say my biggest mistake was I was talking way too much.
Yeah.
And not
And
asking
has that changed
questions.
any?
Just a tad, luckily my potential clients tell me to shut the hell up.
There you go. They
Now,
keep it real.
but when you're doing something and you've identified that somebody has a problem, sometimes we want to just go and fix it. Okay, I can help you, da da da, da, and we just go straight into prescription mode.
Yeah.
And like working with my clients, we actually do mock consultations, and almost every single mock consultation that I've ever had, they talk 80% of the time, where it should be reversed, where the potential client is talking 80% of the time, and your expertise comes out from the questions that you ask, not from all the crap that you're telling them, because you might miss something. You might identify, ooh, God, that's actually the really big reason why they're here. And if you didn't know that, you're not going to be as effective out there. So it's just trying to shut your trap and allowing them to talk through the questions that you're actually listening for.
Yeah. Well played. Well played. Heather?
So it's similar to what Gary was just talking about, but it's the mindset aspect of it. So I've found, and I was like this early in my career, that a lot of people think they have to sell themselves or sell their services. And I went in thinking that's what selling was all about initially. And over the course of my career, I started to pay more attention to the rainmakers versus the partners that really weren't and struggled. And there was a very clear differentiation in how they approached selling. And there was a very different mindset around it. So the rainmakers were not selling themselves or even their services. They were there just to ask deep, penetrating questions, listen a lot, pay attention, ask more questions if needed, offer some value if they thought it could help them. And then when there was a good opening, they'd make the ask. That was very different than the people who did the opposite, which they would go into, oh, I can help you with, instead of helping them. They'd also assume a lot,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
they'd immediately go into the sell without asking enough questions and really understanding what was going on. And so for me, it was that differentiation of seeing that over a couple of years earlier in my career, where I was like, oh, that's what you do, not the sell yourself.
Yeah. I just never really, because I did well, I never really thought about how buyers and sellers had changed their roles, right? So like back in the day, you just take the seller's word for it and buy what they were selling, and that was it could have been real or it could have been an illusion. You didn't really know, and you got burned, but hopefully you didn't that often. And buyers started getting control with the internet and with information, and they just totally took control of the sales process, and they were the one asking the questions. They were the ones getting free consulting and everything. And I think we as professionals need to flip the script and say, hey, how do we run a meeting where it's a win-win, but I'm controlling the environment so that I can get the information to give you the proper solution so that you can win. And I think that was what was missing for me. I was just a salesman. I was a salesman. I wasn't thinking about how to fit someone in a round peg in a round hole. And so that's really what was sort of a big epiphany for me. Okay, we all know that people buy from people they know, like, and trust. It's been said over and over again in professional services and networking. What's your secret to developing long-term successful relationships? Judy, this is your jam, so I'm going to start with you.
I really think that when you build a personal connection, that is the basis for having a really mutually beneficial, productive relationship where two people really want to contribute to each other's success. And I'll give you an example. I went and met with someone 2 days ago, and the conversation was business, 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 business. And then all of a sudden, I just pivoted and I asked a personal question. How long have you been in Dallas? Did you grow up in Dallas? I mean, I looked at their bio. I kind of knew what the answer was, but I just went to, like, it was a drastic switch in the conversation. And then it led to this whole other conversation about travel and a foreign language and music and animals and hobbies. And then it really shifted the whole dynamic. There was already then this, yeah, we talked about some business, but gosh, now we have a lot of things that we find very interesting about each other. And there's a desire, because look, there's so many people that you can work with, right? You get to the table because you're technically competent and good, and someone else said you need to know this person. There's tons of people we can all work with. But we really want to work with people, to your point, that we know, like, and trust. I want to work with people that I enjoy, that I find interesting, that I think have mutual interest in helping me in my practice. And I think by being vulnerable enough to want to build a personal connection just exponentially takes that business relationship to a new place.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. Heather?
I agree wholeheartedly. I think this is the key to developing know, like, and trust. I think for me, it's always going in with the mindset of just being of service as a human being, not as a lawyer or as a service provider. It's meeting them with where they are, getting to know them, connecting, being fully present. And if some opportunity comes up where you can help them, letting them know. And often those opportunities early on have nothing to do with what you do, by the way. That's at least been my experience. But if you're just there for them as a human, you're going to develop that know, like, trust very quickly.
Do you have one specific thing that you do regularly that deepens relationships that you could add?
I mean, my big thing is I'm super curious. So it really depends on the person. But if I'm meeting somebody for the first time or getting together, maybe just for the second time, and it's more of a one-on-one, say we met at a bigger event, I'm always trying to ask them about current issues, challenges, like harder questions that a lot of people never ask. And it is interesting to me how grateful they are, because usually people like to talk about those things and listen. And I mean, really listen. Like, active listening is hard for a lot of us. You can't assume, you can't think, oh, yeah, I've been in that situation and want to chime in. You've got to work really hard at really listening to them. And I'd say my best tip is to understand that silence is okay, because we often overvalue this need to come in and say something. Sometimes it's more powerful to just stay quiet for a moment and allow them to just be. And that creates more vulnerability. It creates a connection that's much deeper very quickly. And it creates that trust, I think, much more quickly.
And I like what Judy, the Judy's talking about, finding common ground and natural affinities. I want to also
Yep.
just mention how important it is to not do one-upsmanship. So if somebody's telling you something about, connect with them on something, but don't, like, you were in a car crash, I was in a plane crash, or you got shot in the arm, I got shot in the heart, whatever. Like,
The
it's
me too.
the
Oh,
me
yeah, me
too. Yeah.
too.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. So it's better to just be a good listener, I think, right? And just demonstrate empathy and connect on different levels that way. Gary?
Yes.
Yeah, I got a much better answer than those two. Like, me too. It's so
Well
much
played,
better.
sir. Well played.
No,
You guys brought a knife to a gunfight.
what Judy and Heather just said is so freaking spot on. The only thing that I would kind of put onto this is you need to be really focused and intentional with your relationship over time and consistently adding value to those people. So if you do exactly what Judy and Heather had said, you're going to get to know them really, really well. And therefore, it'll be easier to add value to them on a consistent basis. And personal, professional, it doesn't make a difference. An introduction to somebody who could refer them a ton of business. So like if I have a divorce attorney who's in front of me and I ask them, who do you get your referrals from? They say financial advisors, because we deal with the high net worth individuals. I don't hang around a bunch of divorce people. I'm not able to, refer that, but I can introduce them to somebody who can send them 20 different referrals. That's adding tremendous value because I'm sharing my network with them. But the only way I can do that correctly is by knowing them. You just got to know them.
And the data, and I'm friends with Matt Dixon, and he spoke at he wrote the Challenger sale. I mean, this guy's a top level player, and professional services. He did the research, and the recent, thousands and thousands of professionals, and the research showed that just providing good service at a fair price, I call the client loyalty myth. That's not going to do it. Like we need to, how do we connect them? How do we help them? How do we, write them personal thank you notes? How do we what are we doing? How are we getting sticky and making sure that they trust us and know us and like us and want us around as long as so when another player comes into town and says, hey, come over and join our firm, and they go, no, 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 I would never do that. I'm with this lawyer at this firm, and I would never leave. That's what you need said these days, because it's just a competitive landscape. So it's, what are you doing above and beyond the great work? Like that's table stakes, right?
Yep.
And I think people get confused about what being of service is. It's not just being of service in respect of the job that you do. It's more than that.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
And it's so much harder to get new business than to keep existing stuff. So deepening those relationships and continuing to add value is kind of a no-brainer. Judy, anything to add on to that?
I think we've hit it all on that question.
Oh, we certainly have. All right. Let's continue on then, everybody. Competition. Oh, there we go. I just said it. Competition's everywhere. How do you differentiate yourself in your space? And then let's add on to that and say, how should or could professionals differentiate in their space? So I think, if we're going to be talking about how we're doing it, that might be a good lead into what we recommend others to do. And Gary, you want to start us out on this one?
Sure. I would say a couple of things. One is we really work with our clients in regards to the neuroscience of how we make decisions. And that's such an important element, not only in business development, but also in marketing. Because if you understand how our lizard brain or our old brain makes decisions, it makes it so much easier. It also helps out with charisma and influence. Because if you can really understand charisma and influence, which is a skill, this is not like what a lot of people, he was born charismatic. I can't swear. That's not true at all. But
Bunch of malarkey.
Yeah, it's a bunch of malarkey. But if you can really understand the nature of being charismatic, it helps you to influence other people. And the difference between influence and manipulation is influence, there's a win-win situation, where manipulation is I win, you lose, and you're just trying to shove it down somebody's throat. So ethically, it falls in line with so many people that are out there, but they're afraid to learn about influence, and they're afraid to learn about charisma because, and this is what Heather had talked about earlier, is mindset. If they've got the right mind, if they don't have the right mindset, they'll typically go in and fail. And then, this stuff doesn't work. It's like, it works, but you've got to go in with the right mindset into that.
Yeah.
So
charisma is the key. How is that? Is that differentiating for you?
Again,
if you guys haven't
swear.
picked up on it
Damn
yet, Gary and I have a history. Okay, this is happening. This is happening in real time. All right.
Yeah, that's why I got bald, is so I could be more charismatic.
You get that Lex Luthor charisma, I'll tell you.
There you go. There you go. Yeah.
You evil genius. All right, Judy.
3 things.
Here we go.
Here's my 3. Speak in basic terms. Don't assume because somebody is a CPA and you're an attorney that they understand what you're saying and how you're saying it. So speak in basic terms. The second thing is identify the differences between you and your peers in the industry. And the third thing is the most important thing of all. When you identify the differences between you and your peers in the industry, you need to specifically share how that adds value to the person that you're speaking to. So this is what I do. It's different than such and such. And the value to you is XYZ. So speak in basic terms, identify your differences, and be very clear in the value that that adds to the person you're speaking to.
Yeah, rock solid. Thank you, Heather.
So mine is very similar to what was just said. And
You're not
everybody
going to
has their own.
differentiate yourself from the
Yeah.
other two if you're,
Well, it is
you
a little
know,
different. So, because I see it a little differently. And I think that to differentiate yourself, you need to be very willing to showcase your personality a little bit more, but also to showcase. And for me, I think about it in terms of lawyers because that's who I primarily coach, but it would be applicable to everybody. But what is your lawyering style? What is your actual approach? Because we all have very different ones. And do not be afraid to showcase that in the way that you talk about things, in the tips that you're giving, in the stories that you share in marketing and presentations, in articles, and all these things. And I find that a lot of lawyers are leery of doing this because they are afraid that other lawyers will not agree. And that is the biggest mistake you can make because you are not there to sell to those other lawyers. You are there to showcase how you show up for your clients very clearly so that the people who are attracted to that will actually want to work with you. And the people who are not are repelled by it because you don't want those people. So I think that it's really easy for a lot of lawyers, especially, to get into here's the law, here's what you need to know. Okay, well, tell me why that's important and tell me how you would break it down. Tell me how it would apply in the way that you would talk to a client. Tell me
Yeah.
how that changes a strategy for your typical client. Get out there and give your opinions because that is what really makes you unique and that is what sells.
Yeah, and I'm going to take a little different path, but I was working in over 50 industries before I decided to push my chips into legal. And what I noticed was that lawyers were feeling a little uncomfortable because I had experience in a lot of different industries instead of being an expert or a specialist in their industry. And so it took about a year and a half, but I realized, I have to pull the trigger on this if I want to be a player in the big leagues of legal. I need to niche down and I need to specialize. And so I think that's one thing that lawyers know and other people may know. But it's if you try to be different than everybody, don't try to be everything to everybody. It might seem like there's a lot of business there, but ultimately the riches are in the niches, as they say. The other thing I think that's interesting is doing a litmus test. Like if you have something really unique about yourself, like how responsive you are, or it could be a specialty or something, run it through a litmus test and just ask, am I the only one saying this? If you're the only one saying that, you have a 2-hour return call guarantee, or that you have a deep, aerospace background because you worked at NASA for 10 years as an engineer before you got your law degree and became an IP attorney, whatever it might be, that's something that is going to be different from everybody else. One of my clients is an IP attorney and he worked at the patent office. So like he brings that up in his infomercial and on his profile all the time that he worked at the patent office. That's who I want representing me, someone that knows the ins and outs of how to get something through. The second thing you want to ask in that litmus test is who cares? Like if you're saying something that no one else is saying, but nobody cares about it. So you have to kind of ask your clients, ask people around and really get a good feel, try it out, test some things out. But ultimately, competition is everywhere, and we're trying to get our piece of the pie. And sometimes we have to niche down or do some things different in order to get the bigger piece.
Yeah,
Okay.
and Steve, on top of that too, use ChatGPT to say who else is doing this. If you think that this is going to make you the unicorn that's out there, ask that as a prompt for ChatGPT because then it's going to scour the internet and give you some results. Hopefully they're not too scary, but yeah.
Now the research can be done quickly, right? It's not like you have
very
to
quickly
figure it out. All right. So I'm a big systems guy. And I think that a lot of professionals are out there trying to make it rain without systems. What they're doing is an old form of or methodology called winging it. And I would be curious to hear what your system or methodology is for sales for rainmaking and why is it so important to have one? And Heather, why don't you jump off on this one?
Sure. So my system is pretty simple. It's 4 things. First, always be curious. You need to be curious, ask questions, dive deep, listen intently so that you can get to know people and actually understand them and not assume. And I also follow the 80-20 rule. It was mentioned earlier, where you are trying to speak only 20% of the time, listening 80%, the other person is speaking 80% of the time. It works really well. And by the way, this takes a lot of pressure off of those of you who think you're introverted and can't like hold conversations. I get that a lot from introverts. I can't be a rainmaker because I'm not good at networking. No, actually, introverts are very good at networking once they get over the mindset stuff, because we're very good listeners. So
Mhm.
utilize that to your benefit. The second one is lead with value. We've talked about this already. Be of service, not just in your role in what you do, but to them as a human being. Find ways to help. The third is make the offer. Because
Mm.
if you are doing what we've been talking about, you're going to find openings. It's amazing to me how many times I will hear from clients and attorneys. I had this awesome conversation and they'll relay what they did and what was said. And I'm like, did you ask for the business? Because that was a perfect opening. It was clear, and they didn't because it felt uncomfortable. Make it. The worst they can say is no, and it's never a no forever. It's just a no for now. And then third or fourth, actually, is follow up. This one I find very few people do. They think, oh, yeah, they said they want to work with me. And then they never follow up. They assume that means they're going to come back to you. That's actually rarely the case. You need to follow up, and you don't, it's not, you're not bugging them. It shows that you're reliable. It builds trust. Follow up.
Awesome. Awesome. Judy, give us three.
Three things. So have a plan. So I can't tell you what the plan is because the plan is going to be different for every single person. But the point is have a plan. Don't just wing it. The second thing is reiterating what Heather said. This is a huge thing of mine. Do what you say you're going to do. I'm going to introduce you to this person. I'm going to email you tomorrow. I'm going to call you back. I'm going to follow up with you. If you are volunteering that you are going to do something and you are setting that own deadline or you're making that offer or commitment, then by goodness, just do it. And you would not believe how many people don't. And then someone says, oh, they said they were going to introduce me to someone and they didn't. This happened to me literally this morning. Had a conversation. I told someone I was going to introduce them to someone. I did. I circled back around with this other person who was there and I said, by the way, I want to let you know I made that introduction. And this person was like, I know. And we already talked about it and it was great. And they can't believe that you did that. And I was like, how can people say they can't believe that you would make an introduction when you offered to make an introduction? So, point two, do what you say you're going to do. The third thing is have some EQ, and I call it don't being a rat on a Cheeto. So I'm going to imitate that. A rat on a Cheeto is like, do not be a rat on a Cheeto. That is not a good sales tactic. You really need to, if you think like, oh, I need to follow up with them. Well, maybe just take a breath and maybe it's not time yet. So those are my three things. Have a plan, do what you say you're going to do, and then don't be a rat on a Cheeto. It's not about you, it's about them.
Fantastic. All right, Gary, top that. Be
I
a
can't
cheetah.
even like think of mine after the rat on a Cheeto. Ah,
Pizza rat.
yeah, seriously. So I'm gonna go with the four, like Heather did. My four are this. One, first, uncover what they need. Really, you need to understand what are their needs, what are their wants, but also what are their pains. Because if you really don't get to their pains, you're really not going to move the needle. The second thing is identify what success looks like for that person. What does success look like? Because, I had a coffee the other day where I asked this question of a prospective client, and he goes, what success looks like is $20 million in revenue for my firm. I said, okay, what was last year? He said 200,000. Okay, you're a solo. What makes you think? He's like, well, Andy said you did great stuff for him, so I figure that is
Is that 1 year or two?
delusional.
Is that 1 year or
Yeah,
two, Gary?
yeah. I was like, okay, that's delusional. So it also identified who I'm not going to work with because I told the person, sorry, can't help you out because he'd be upset. But if you understand what success looks like, you can parrot it back to them when you are trying to help them out because they already told you what do they want. Third one is ask if they need help immediately with whatever it is that they're really looking for. That creates a sense of urgency. It also allows objections to come out, because objections are our best friends when it comes to a consultation. You want that. That means that the person is interested, but you have to overcome it. If they stay silent, guess what? They're not going to work with you. And then the last one is tell them why they would be an ideal client for you. We sometimes don't say that. And what I find is when you tell them and you're specific, you don't just go, Judy, you'd be a great client of mine. Why? What specifically did Judy say? So it connects us, but it allows me to do my best work when I work with my ideal clients, because then I have energy, then I'm totally into it. And I love those aspects. So for those 4 things, if somebody does the consultation, and it's really a conversation, it's not a sales pitch. It's not, I'm going to train. It's just, hey, what do you want? What does success look like? Do you need this urgently? And I think you would make a great ideal client for me. And here's the reason why. So there's that connection. Because look, in a consultation, there's 2 decisions. You're trying to decide if you're going to work with them just as much as they're going to try to decide to work with you. So it needs to, that also takes the pressure off of, oh my God, I have to perform.
And that's why the traditional model of sales is so bad, because the seller's out for the seller, the buyer's out for the buyer, and it's just causing this friction where nobody really feels good about it. And I knew years ago that I didn't like selling. And that sounds weird from someone who spent a career in sales, but I didn't like selling. I didn't like, putting people into things that wasn't a good fit. And I never wanted to be sold to. By the way, when someone sells to me now, my wife watches me. She sees what I'm like, the internal turmoil I'm going through because it's so frustrating. Yeah. So years ago, probably 21, 22 years ago, this hit me that I needed to create a process to help lawyers, and it's called Sales-Free Selling. It's the title of my first book. And what it does is it explains that we can't sell the way we sold and we can't buy the way we buy. We need to come together and figure out how can we make this a win-win. And so instead of selling, what I'm suggesting and what I think you're all suggesting is we want to walk a buyer through a buying decision to a fit, right? To see if there's a fit, to get to the truth, and to understand, are we all moving forward together? And to Judy's point earlier, or should we just move it to a no and stay friends and not live in hope? And you have to lie to me and ghost me and all the stuff that people go through that drives everyone nuts. So it's really about how do we get the buyer to buy by walking them through a decision to seeing if it's all there. And in many cases, you don't have to you should make the ask, but in some cases they might be like, so what do we do next? And then you tell them to sign the, engagement letter or whatever and move it forward. So it doesn't have to be complicated, but I think every professional that is out there winging it needs to do their homework and start becoming a student of the game. What Heather, Gary, and Judy and I are saying, have a plan and a process and a system to follow. And by the way, you also then get predictable results. Anybody want to add on that, or we'll move on? All right. This is one of our last questions. Past statistics show, I said this earlier, that it's 6 times more money, time, and energy to land a new client than to keep an existing one. How do you build long-term client loyalty? So this is really something we did kind of dip our toe into earlier, but I'd love to hear some specifics of, or even an example of how you built so much loyalty with a client that they would never think to go anywhere else. And Judy, 3 things, maybe?
3 things.
Here we go. Showtime.
I could list 10, but I don't like 3. I think being proactive in reaching out to a client without a specific agenda. You don't need something from them. So I have this thing where if I think of a client, I literally, as soon as I can, will stop what I'm doing and I will call them, email them, and say, you were in my mind. I wanted you to know. You don't need to call me back, but I hope everything is going well, and I was thinking about you. And I will promise you, the times that I don't do that I don't act upon it, the next day, that client will call me. And then you cannot say, oh my gosh, I was just thinking about you yesterday, because it's so cliche. And they're like, yeah, right. So I proactively will reach out to clients for no specific reason. And even if you don't hear back from them, they're like, gosh, she was thinking about me. She didn't need anything. She didn't want anything from me. She just wanted to check on me and make sure I was okay. The second thing is, and you see this in the progression of your relationship with clients, you want to be seen as a resource for them for things other than what your specific service is. So I absolutely love when a client calls me and says, you know what, this doesn't, I have a question for you. It doesn't have anything to do with my portfolio, but I need a bookkeeper for my business over here. Can you refer me a bookkeeper? I need a travel agent. Do you have a travel agent for my parents? They're going on this big 50th wedding anniversary. I mean, whatever it is, I want them to think about me because they know that I spend a lot of valuable time vetting relationships to bring great resources to my clients. And they know that not only am I going to show up for them, but that I'm willing to provide for them other great resources. And then the third thing is, it goes back to something I already said, just do what you say you're going to do. Be responsive. You would not believe, I had a client call me. It was last night. I saw it on my phone at about 9:30. It was about 7:50 when the call came in. And I responded back to that client. I said, I saw you called me. It was like almost 10 o'clock at night. I'm available now if you need to talk, or we can talk in the morning. And the response I got this morning was, I'm so sorry, it was a butt dial. But the thing is I was responsive and I was there and I was available. Not, and I'm not saying you have to be available 24/7, right? We all have lives. So it's proactively reach out, build a relationship so that you're seen as a resource beyond the actual service you're providing, and then do what you say you're going to do.
Fantastic. Heather?
So I agree with everything she said. And I'm going to get into really, I think, the mindset you have to be that way. This is something that I learned from that rainmaker that I talked about early in my career, that I adopted. And it's what helped me grow my business in big law, and now my current business now. And that is to see yourself not as the service provider, but as their partner. And so you're equal, you're collaborative, you brainstorm together, but you're also a partner for their business in general, for them. You're there for them. And it changes how you perceive that relationship. It changes your approach in a positive way. It actually helps you to do those things that were just talked about. And it really is felt then by the client. And it makes you invaluable to them in their business.
Awesome. Gary?
Come on. Why do I have to go last on this one?
You're not, I'll
Jesus.
go after you.
Yeah. And how I encapsulate all what Heather and Judy said is make them feel important by adding value to them, by constantly thinking about them. And when I say constantly thinking about them, you have an email that comes across your desk that says, oh, there's this webinar. Oh my God. I'll send that out to somebody else that this could be of value to them. And like what Judy was saying, hey, I was thinking about you, saw this article. Here you go. Like, hey, Steve, I just saw this article about how there's nobody flying these days. Here you go. You should have read that, you know. But it really does make the person feel important. And then you become a COI, a center of influence. And that's an honor when somebody calls me a COI, because we have, like Judy said, we've vetted these people out, you know, and especially with the networking group that we're in, these are all a bunch of professionals. These are my bench. Like I could throw out all these different people all over the country to add value to my clients and to be able to make them feel important, that they know there's a one-stop shop and they know that I'm going to do what I say I'm going to do. So it's just making them feel important, because what's the opposite? Yeah, I'm going to do that. And you never do it. Or you just think about yourself. You're not making them feel important at all. They actually go, the person doesn't care about me at all.
My father, the late great Larry the lawyer, he went out to one of his client passed away and he did his eulogy. His client had asked him to do his eulogy. Have you ever been asked to do someone's eulogy, a client's? I
Oh,
haven't,
client,
but
no.
that's a client. Yeah. But
Wow.
that's what my dad meant to this guy. And then the guy like begged him to come back and out of retirement to work for him. I mean, we're talking, and the guy made a lot of money on cell towers, but it's just, how do your clients feel about you and what's going to keep them from jumping ship because your rates are a little higher or because, things change in the marketplace or whatever, and they're just never going to leave you. And that's really what professionals need to be thinking about right now. Yes, go out and get new business and keep a full pipeline. No one's going to argue that point. But if it's so much more time and money and energy to get someone new, and you're not taking care of, the cake that's in the oven already, like, come on, that's sort of a no-brainer. So, I think we have time for maybe one or two more questions. I just want to get through them all because Judy didn't think we would, but we're gonna do it. All right. This is one of my favorite topics. And I've been really leaning into this lately. How do sales and marketing work together to enhance a professional's ability to build market share and ultimately more business? Because I'm like, the BD guy. So there's marketing agencies that do that, but I'm finding that no, you got to kind of dabble in both. Gary, you're going to start us off.
Oh, fantastic. All right. So, let's go in threes.
And that's enough of Gary. All right, Heather, tell us what you.
So I would say one is consistency. You need to be consistent in both sales and marketing. Your messaging needs to be consistent because if your marketing says one thing and then your business development says something totally different, that's going to screw things up. When I used to run a commercial finance company, we used to have a sales department and a marketing department, and they would always, clash. The whole reason why is because the messaging what the marketing put out there was not the messaging that the salespeople were pitching. So you need to make sure that that's out there. The other thing is you got to be consistent of showing up. Show up. Go to those different events. Get on to like LinkedIn. Make sure that you're engaging on LinkedIn, that you're posting regularly, because then people will reach out to you. Because let's just be honest, marketing does not get you clients. Marketing brings awareness that you exist and the services that you offer. It's what you do once they become aware, and that's where the business development kicks in. So those two things need to be working together as opposed to siloed out, And so if you're in a firm that's siloed out, I would suggest pulling those resources together because as an attorney, it's going to make your life so much easier because you don't want what's out there to be different than what you're saying to other people.
Yeah. Awesome. Heather, marketing and sales, how do they work together?
I mean, my answer is very similar to the one before,
Oh my
but
God, we need to
I
put
think
you
of
two in a.
yeah, it's not a surprise though, honestly, when you listen to everything we've been saying.
Right.
I like to think of the consistency as congruence. Like it's interesting to me. It's very jarring when you see marketing and then you get to the sales piece and they're completely disconnected from one another. And so I think of it as a coin. They're two sides of one coin, right? We all tend to either see it's funny because it's different lawyers think of this differently. They either think of BD as one big giant thing without differentiating between marketing and sales. And there's some problem with that because most of them then stick to marketing and don't sell because they're very uncomfortable with the sales part. And then there's the others who see them so separately. And then there is no congruence or consistency between the two. And so you want to make sure you very clearly understand the differentiation, but how they work together. They're very interconnected. So I like to think of marketing, and he said this earlier, it's how you create awareness. It's how you create credibility. It's how you create early know, like, trust when somebody hasn't actually met you, right? So
Yeah.
they see you speak, they see you write, they see you on LinkedIn. That's marketing. And that needs to basically be synonymous with how you sell. So that it needs to be the way you show up for real. And your sales needs to be that way too. So for those law firms that have sales departments, you actually do need to pay attention to how they sell and what they're doing. There needs to be congruence between the two things.
Awesome. Judy.
Three things. Gary obviously can see my list over here because he hit three,
No
literally
peeking.
verbatim. The first thing, Consistent messaging. The second thing is, how are you creating value for the other person? Not talking about you, but how are you creating value for them? And then the third thing is show up, show up, show up. You just got to show up.
Yeah. I've been talking a lot lately about climbing a mountain, and you need to climb both sides at the same time. There's the business development sales side, and there's the marketing. If you climb either of them separately, you can still get to the top. But if you can somehow climb both together, that's going to really pay off big dividends in how you build your brand and how again, build that credibility in the market. And then when your name is mentioned, right, people are already familiar with it. And now the referral is like, oh yeah, I definitely want to meet with Gary, or definitely want to meet with Heather, or Judy, whatever it might be. The other thing that I like, and I'm doing this quite a bit, I'm trying to do things that help me to be successful, but also I'm trying to get my clients to emulate some of the things I'm doing. So I think of it like a pinwheel. So you've got networking, you've got client, relationships and introductions. Then I've got 2 podcasts. I'm writing for Above the Law, and I'm working at Attorney at Work. I've got the YouTube. I've got social media. All this video being created, all this content being created, books. And so I've got this pinwheel that's spinning. So I get a call from a sheriff in Virginia who's a lawyer, and he doesn't have much to say other than, how do we get started together? And I'm like, well, we're going to slow that down because I need to know who you are and what you want to do. But we talked for half an hour. He was absolutely pre-sold. He's been with me for the last 4 months in the car, listening to my podcast. And basically it was locked up, and we're starting, I think, on Saturday. Everything came back. So what was the sales that I needed to do? Right? There was no sales. It was pre-sold through the marketing. And then obviously we met and made sure it was a good fit. So I think all of this stuff works together, but ultimately you need to put yourself out there. I think that's what the gang is talking about here, is that you just can't be at your desk cranking out billable hours or just, doing tax returns. You've got to get out, and you've got to start meeting people, and then get your brand cooking. We've got about 2 minutes left, so we're just going to do
real quick, Steve.
Oh yeah, Gary, please.
Real quick, in regards to that, we talk about like congruency, consistency, but imagine if somebody had listened to your podcast and then they met you and you were totally different. That throws off trust, right? And
That
we've
sure
seen
does.
that where
Yeah.
people are, I'm a personality, and then you meet them and you're like, you're dull as hell, or vice versa, whatever, right?
Yeah.
But that's that consistency that we need to have, is that we need to show up authentically ourselves, because we don't want to put the mask on. Oh, it's my marketing mask. Oh, it's my sales mask. It's all got to be the same, so that you can just show up authentically. Because I remember meeting you for the first time. I was like,
Oh, boy.
Steve's the real deal. No. But,
Okay.
but in all honesty, because I've heard you on the podcast, and then I get to meet you and I'm like, you are always the same. You're always Steve.
Yep.
There's a lot of authenticity to that.
Yeah.
Only
And someday
compliment
I
I'll
hope my
give to you.
teenager feels the way you feel. Just kidding. Okay, I'm joking. We're coming around.
Last question. Go.
You want me to hit the last question? You think we got it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, all right. Boy, the OCD kicking in with Judy. If a professional wants to strengthen their referral network, what's one thing they should start doing this week that would make a big impact? You got 15 seconds, no 3 things. 15 seconds for everybody.
One thing. It's the easiest. It's the hardest. Ask for an introduction.
Ask for introductions. Fantastic. Heather.
Reconnect intentionally with somebody you haven't talked to in a while. That would be a good referral source.
I love it. I love it. Gary.
Identify what type of professionals would actually refer you business, so you don't waste your time.
Yeah, spend time with the right people for the right reasons. I just want to take a moment again to just thank this amazing panel. If you're picking this up live, or you're picking this up on the replay, you should be taking a ton of notes. You should have a page of notes right now, because everything that was said here today was absolute gold. And ultimately, if you're really serious about having a long-term career in any professional service, the idea that you're going to bring in your own clients is a paramount and critical element that we know you didn't sign up for it, but it is. So sorry, not sorry. I want to thank you all. I want to thank everybody. And again, feel free to, continue checking out all the great information about our faculty. Amazing group. Thank you so much, everybody. And thank you, great panel. We'll see you soon.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.